So welcome, Helena, to the podcast, episode 4 it is right now. And thanks for just following my invitation. I'm glad that we can just talk about some subjects about Fridays for Future, because you're a climate activist. I think this is what you would describe yourself as, probably. If not, you can also say you're not I don't know.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
But you would say you are one, probably.
Well, yeah, I think it's yes, I call myself a climate activist now, but I didn't for a really long time because I thought that it sounded so like you had to be qualified or something like that. And I'm just a young person who I'm really scared for my future, and I've been kind of fighting against that feeling and fighting, for good climate policies like in Germany and Europe and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that makes me a climate activist, but I feel like that, if as soon as you call yourself an activist, it seems like everybody else can't be one. So I think, I just want to make really clear that we need everyone in a movement, and everyone can be a climate activist, and everyone can join the fight. Yeah.
Join the movement, kind of, also of your group, and be part of it, maybe also a little bit. Yeah, no, that's cool. So could you describe a little bit about what is actually your function, or do you have actually a function, or is it that everybody, all the members, have more or less the same things and possibilities to do something, or do you also already have certain tasks? I don't know. What you follow?
We're a grassroots movement. Can organize demonstrations in their town, or can join a working group that we have on a national level. And I personally just do a lot of coordinative work, so a lot of strategy work and talking to the press and so on. So obviously have areas where I focus on, and that's mostly trying to coordinate ourselves on a national level in Germany and getting everyone all the materials and all the resources and all the information they need in order to strike, or in order to build campaigns to specific topics and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're coordinating something like that a little bit, or so are you a coordinator and then you tell other members what to do? Do you have plans, or do you have certain strategies that you follow, or how does it work? Do you
I guess. Yeah, our structure is kind of complicated. In a lot of places, it's not like I'm in charge of anybody or anything like that. It's mostly about empowering other people and just supporting everyone as much as possible by giving them resources and information and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some. I guess that's kind of where I work, where I focus my role, but that doesn't mean I'm officially the coordinator or anything like that. It's it's mostly people coming together who are willing to put time and effort into something, who then end up doing that kind of work.
Okay, nice, that's cool. And so since when are you part of the movement? When did you start the first time? What was the beginning?
Yeah, I guess since hour one. So we started kind of coordinate of 2018, I think, yeah. Where we did the first kind of strikes under the motto of Fridays for Future. I think it was the first Friday in December, where we did strikes in 14 cities, and I organized the first strike in Frankfurt. And then we just kind of kept going from there and kept organizing strikes and building the movement, and so I haven't stopped since then.
Okay, haven't stopped. Okay, that's cool. And so the role that you have right now, was it the same thing that you did when you started first with Fridays for Future, or did you just start by going to I don't know, these demonstrations and the working groups in the cities or something? So what was the first contact that you had, or how did you come to the movement? Because maybe that's interesting for people also. How does it actually start from the very beginning?
Yeah. So in December of 2018, I was really frustrated, and I was really angry, and I was really scared of the climate crisis, because I was seeing all these reports, and the IPCC released a special report on 1.5 degrees, and I was just really worried about the climate crisis. And at the same time, I was really defeated because I didn't really see what we could do about the government's not acting. I didn't really see, all these different NGOs and parties and so on had not been successful. So I kind of was really convinced that I wouldn't be able to make a difference in the world. And then in December of 2018, Greta Thunberg was at the climate conference in Katowice in Poland. And, she held a speech and she talked about how she was striking school for the climate, and a lot of people in Germany and other young people who were feeling like me saw that speech, and we thought, okay, we can do this too. We can do the same thing. Let's just start doing this. So I was added to like a WhatsApp group, and it was called Fridays for Future Germany, and nobody knew what Fridays for Future was, and nobody knew what school strikes were. And we just said, okay, this Friday, let's just do it. And it was kind of lame in Frankfurt. We were only like 30 people. But we kind of felt that this had potential, and we felt like this could become something. And so we just said, okay, let's do it again next Friday. And so that was what my work was at the beginning a lot, just making these weekly strikes happen in Frankfurt, getting people to come, having a route, having doing all the like official
to get a demonstration to happen and stuff like that. So no, it was just a lot of work to make these weekly Friday strikes happen at the beginning.
Okay. So, it was really the beginning of the group in Frankfurt that you started with. So it was a school from like people from your school who also joined that, or so did you have classmates or something that took you there, or I don't know, like how did you enter that group, or did you have friends from like other groups already before who were frustrated with the situation in general, or yeah, how was that beginning?
At the beginning, it wasn't that many people from my school. It was mostly people from other schools in Frankfurt that were organizing with me.
Okay.
And I didn't really know any of them. It was
Okay.
like one person went with me the first week, and then after that, we just joined like in this haphazard group of people who felt that this could be big if we kept doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like a lot of just I think like a lot of people in Germany who were like feeling the same way that I did. It was really like good to get to know them and to work together, and to realize that like we as young people have so much potential if we like work together, and if we like believe that we can make a difference, and by telling our stories and by being vulnerable about our fears of the climate crisis, and by like pointing out the utter denial that's happening on a political level. And so that was really it was like a very spontaneous like group of people who just came together, who were at these Friday strikes, and were like, okay, let's organize the next one next week.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. That's cool. But this is like a question I would have, is that because I think lots of climate activists are sometimes asked, like, was there like this one moment that you had that brought you to activism, or like introduced you to this kind of engagement? But then I sometimes see that, and I feel like people are sometimes, I don't know, like annoyed by that question, because to them, I'm not sure how it is with you, but to them it is like this wasn't like this one thing where, I don't know, like it was a very hot day and then I was like, yeah, this is climate change or something, but it was rather to them like a process, like something that they see over and over again.
Yeah.
So would you also say like it's like a process of realization that we have climate change and that things are changing, or is it like maybe it was for you like one moment where you were like, okay, no, this is like not good, or I don't know.
No, I feel like the climate crisis was always part of my life. Like, I don't even know when I first learned about it. I feel like I just always was reading articles and knew about it from like a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
And it always worried me, it always scared me, but I always thought like by the time I'm grown up, this will have been like done with. Like people will have acted, because we have all these politicians and they obviously know what the problem is. So I was, I was a child, and I was, always very convinced that this might be bad, but we would like solve it just like we solved so many other problems like over the course of human history. And then, as I got like to be like 15, 16, I just started being really utterly defeated, because I saw, that there was still like no change happening on a political level. So yeah, I think very, very much a process. I think one moment I can definitely remember was we watched I think an Uncomfortable Truth in English class, the Al Gore's film, and the fact itself, like that themselves, didn't really surprise me. I knew how bad the climate crisis was, but what really got to me was that film, by the time I watched it, was over 10 years old. So like over a decade, where the information was there and the information was out there, and it had been very clear for so many years, like how bad the climate crisis was. And that for me was like a real realization that if young people and if we don't call people to action, then nothing will happen. And I think that was the moment that like really not convinced me that the climate crisis was a problem, but that kind of convinced me that um, yeah, I myself needed to do something.
Okay. No, no, no. I completely understand. So what is important, I think, now is that for the past 4 years there was somewhat like an international frustration towards the battle against climate change, because what you guys fight for is also that the executive level of politics is doing something against climate change. But so with the past American, the president and his ministers and all that, who are really, really against the climate change Paris Agreement, there was this international level of frustration. So, do you have, or are you a little bit more optimistic right now with the new government of the US that has rejoined the climate Paris Agreement, or do you think it's going to be like somewhat the same, that there's not going to be much change?
Okay, so I want to kind of answer in two parts because I think first of all, this whole like in Europe we hear a lot of we like again and again I've encountered this of politicians saying it doesn't matter what we do in Europe because of the US and because of China, and that is obviously like a very like a cheap excuse because we not only are responsible for a huge like part of like emissions historically as like European countries, but also we have like the European Union and Germany within that have like a huge responsibility and have like they have like there's a huge possibility if we act like and if we like revolutionize our economic system and our like society around climate action. So I think that's like the first step that I like we could have been acting over the last 4 years as an international community even without the US. At the same time, obviously, it's really important, like a really important sign, like especially for instance, for the international climate conferences. I was in Madrid so the year before last, at COP25 at the climate conference, and it was so utterly disappointing because society, like civil society worldwide, had been like moving and pushing for so much, and then at what happened within the walls of the climate conference in Madrid was like absolutely disappointing, and that was partly because the US like didn't even send that many people and were like not pushing for international action. So I think that is really hopeful to see the US rejoining the climate agreement and like reformulating their commitment to climate action on an international level, and also to see Biden formulating climate as like part of an economic recovery, and like even though he's not willing to put in place the whole Green New Deal, to see like the Sunrise Movement and all these movements in the US pushing for change. So I think that's really hopeful, but at the same time I think it doesn't change German European climate politics because we could have been acting the whole time and we still need to be acting just as much. So I think in like that sphere, like I'm glad to see that, but I also know like my colleagues and the other young people in the US will like take care of that, and like our responsibility is very much getting like our governments and our local governments like right here to act.
Okay. So you mentioned the climate conference in Madrid. This was 2000. When was it, 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
It was like fall of 2019. Yeah, December
2019.
2019.
Okay. And so you said you were very disappointed in what was happening there, what was being discussed there. What made you, being so disappointed about just maybe like some things that you were really disappointed about in that event.
I mean, we were talking to like people from NGOs and climate activists who had been coming to like the international UN climate conferences for over a decade, and they told us that the difference between what was happening outside of the walls of the climate conference, so like all over the world and through civil society and so on, and what was happening within the walls of the climate conferences had never been so stark. So it was just so like we had been, we had in Germany 1.4 million people on the streets just like 2 months before that, we had young people all over the world taking to the streets. We had leaders again and again, like reformulating their commitment to act. And then when actually came time to like, put stuff in writing, to sign an agreement, to talk about, what money will go to countries in the global south to pay for their, the climate, what the climate crisis is already doing, to their countries, to their homes. We had, there was just no, like, basically nothing happened. So when we talk about results of the UN climate conference, they were basically zero. And that in a time where we need to be talking not only about NDC commitments, so how much are you willing to reduce your emissions, but also like all these other like climate finances and like how we calculate how much, like all these things that should be on the table were just so basically there was just no result at all. We were there for 2 weeks and we may as well not have been there because it didn't really I think it was just like a waste of time for governments and for us as civil society.
So no real change, like no perspective also maybe was shown to you guys there. Maybe that's also like interesting for just listeners maybe. How did you get to be member of, or how did you get an invitation to go there to this event? Was it like due to your thing with Fridays for Future that you had already a role there, a bigger role, or I don't know, how was that?
Well, so you can go to the climate conference through like badges, and they're given to NGOs and organizations. So we had some NGOs who said they were willing to let like climate strikers and young people take some of their badges and go to the climate conference. So we had quite a lot of people from Europe, but also like other like internationally youth strikers who basically were like given the badges by the NGOs and by like other actors of civil society who are like officially as like civil society invited to the climate conference.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's not as exclusive as for instance like the WEF, like the World Economic Forum. There are like 25,000 people at the UN climate conference.
Okay. But maybe that's also maybe a little bit better or more interesting, right? Because then you have actual potential for discussions with more people, and maybe you're not just a visitor, right? Or did you get in like discussions with like, I don't know, scientists or politicians who were involved with these topics? Was there like lots of possibilities for exchange in general?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like we met with government officials and leaders, but also with like NGOs, with scientists, with other youth strikers from all over the world. But we saw, it was quite amazing because the civil society, like again and again over the last 2 years, got like politicians will thank us because they'll say like, oh, none of this would have been possible without you young people, like keep going. And then at COP itself, when we were like, obviously also protesting within and so on, like they really tried to throw us out. They tried to ban civil society from coming back for like 2 days.
Really?
It was quite like that scandal was pretty
Why would they do that, or why would they say that?
Well, there's like really strict rules about you're not actually allowed to protest within the UN, like within the grounds of the climate conference. And they tried to like debadge all of us and just like ban civil society from taking part.
Okay. Wow. Well,
and then there were like really like discussions with like the UNCCC who like are responsible for that, and until we thankfully all got to go back the next day. But,
So that's not like doing well for the reputation of that event, right? Or for the organizers, maybe. Okay. Well, interesting. So I have another question about the thing. I mean, how to fight climate change. Maybe this is like an important. The core issue actually. Like, how can we fight it, and what are like possible solutions for. Like on the national level, for governments, also for businesses, and for also just the normal people. What can people do? What can businesses do in order to fight it, in order to reduce emissions? Do you have like pinpoints of like Fridays for Future plans? Do you also have like personal views that might differ from like the views of the movement? I would just like to know like your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think as a movement, from the very beginning, we've been very clear on the need for systemic change. So we've, for 40 years, we've been hearing the old, like, reduce your plastic and turn off the light and like I don't know, like 10 tips how to reduce your carbon footprint, and like honestly it hasn't worked. It's quite starkly, making the climate crisis a personal problem um, is a complete distraction from the people who are actually responsible for it. So we need, the way that we can decarbonize quickly, because that is what we need to do. We need to reduce emissions drastically over the next few years and over the next, decades. Um, and that needs to happen on like a political level. So, for instance, with the mechanisms like carbon pricing, like phasing out of fossil fuels in like the power sector, but also in other industries, by exiting coal, exiting gas, and so on. And it needs to happen on an industrial level with companies who are responsible for the climate crisis also taking the responsibility in the need for action. Whether that means not digging up any more coal, or whether that means not building any more carbon and fossil fuel infrastructure. But in the end, we have obviously some different demands as far as the future. What's really clear that like a lot will need to change, and you will need to change in so many places, and that cannot happen at an individual level, but it needs to happen on like a societal level, because in the end we need every single person to be able to live like a carbon-free lifestyle. And to not have that be something that you have to be like rich for or privileged for, because then like it won't work and we won't get there as a society. And we need like we need vision, we need political creativity in order to make this transition one that makes another world possible, and that builds a better world for all of us, and does not like sit on the shoulders of individuals.
Okay. And so if you talk about these goals or these perspectives, how to get out of that crisis and how to reduce emissions, so we have like some real developments right now. So we have like developments in the automotive industry, for example, that is moving towards battery electric cars. What is your view on that, or what is the view of Fridays for Future on that? Actually, are you in favor or are you critical towards that thing? Because it is reducing emissions on the one side, because cars are not, powered by combustion engines anymore. On the other hand, you have development problems with batteries and all that, which is really, really criticized a lot. So what are your perspectives on that?
So we obviously need electric cars. We need to decarbonize the mobility sector, but like we need to also think radically different, because what is clear is that we will not be able to reduce emissions fast enough or quickly enough if we just replace all the cars we have on the streets right now with electric cars. So we need to halve mobility, like we need to halve the number of cars on the street by 2035 if we want to stay in line with 1.5 degrees. So that's really clear.
Oh wow, okay.
So that's my perspective, that we need to, when we're talking about changing the way, like changing mobility, we need to change mobility and not just change what is in our cars. We need to invest in trains, we need to invest in buses, we need to invest in public infrastructure, in bike paths, in like wider sidewalks, in changing the way our city works, so that they work for us. The cars mostly stand around all day, we forget that, but on average cars stand around in one place and just take up space that we could be using for so many other things, like 23 hours on average a day, where they're just taking up space. And I think that's like we need to believe that we can think radically different, and that we can, it's obvious that we can like normal obviously doesn't work. Like everyone's talking in COVID about going back to normal, going back to how it was before. Like how it was before was a crisis, and how it was before got us into the situation. And I think companies will not be able to sell the same amount of cars, and they will not be able to sell the same amount of products, and they will not be able to continue making a profit off the destroying of our future the same way as they have been in the past. And I'm glad that they're building more electric cars, but honestly, it's too slow, it's too late, and it's too little.
Okay. And so wait, you said 30% reduction of cars or 50%? What was that?
No, we need to halve cars on the roads by 2035.
By 2030. Okay. Through what instrument would you, if it would be possible, like what instrument would you use? How would you try to do that? if
Well,
it's
as a government, we can obviously do that from a financial standpoint. We can stop giving money to the car industry. We can stop giving investments and subsidies to car and fossil companies and start investing them in infrastructure and in like public goods. And that's obviously the first way we can do that, because as soon as there's like a comfortable and good bus, like and inexpensive bus route that can take me places, there's no need for me to have a car anymore. So that's obviously the first way we can do that. And then obviously there's other instruments. I mean, that's not obvious. That's like, I don't think it's my job though to like make a complete, like I'm 18 years old. I'm just a young person who's scared for my future, and I don't think it's my, like it's not my role, and it's not my movement, like our movement's role to tell politicians how to do their job. But what is clear is that there's a necessity for change, and there's necessity to reduce costs, for instance, if we want to stay in line with our like emissions reduction targets, and we want to stay in line with the Paris Agreement. So in the end, that's something that needs to happen on a political level. What are the best instruments to make that happen? Whether that is, banning cars at a certain point, whether that is, making like cities car free, whether that is like increasing taxes, or I don't know. Like there's like that is the point where we obviously there's like a democratic process where we find compromises and we find like a way to do that, and that's something that needs to happen in like the parliaments. But what is clear is that we cannot compromise on 1.5, and we cannot compromise on the Paris Agreement, and that's what's happening right now.
Okay. So the 1.5 degree goal, do you think that's still realistic that this is going to happen? If it's, I mean, because to me, this is just my feeling, and I don't read much about, like, I don't read a lot of scientific papers about climate change, but to me, this is a very personal view. Like the past couple months, like I'm just looking outside and I see it's always sunny. It's like almost always sunny. To me, there's not much clouds anymore, and this has been for the past 2 years the case. So this, to me personally, this is very. I feel that it is warming up, and I think.
Yeah, we live in a world where we like in compared to pre-industrial times, we're already at 1.2 degrees warming.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
That can be felt and that can be seen.
Exactly, true. And I think so. The thing is that people, it's been like 2 years maybe that people have realized that are starting to realize that personally now, because before that maybe the problem was that people wouldn't see or feel climate change that strongly personally, but now it is stronger. Or would you disagree? Would you say that is not the case?
Well, the science on that is unclear. So I've read some studies recently, and I've just heard people who, for instance, studied people who were affected by the fires in California. And the thing is, people that are then more scared of fires, but they don't necessarily believe, like they don't necessarily make the connection to the climate crisis automatically. Like that is our job as like a movement to say, like, this is the climate crisis we are feeling right now. But at the same time, like we can't wait until everyone realizes it's affecting themselves, because we know people like in the global south already drastically affected by the climate crisis, where there's like droughts, there's wildfires, there's natural disasters. And for them, 1.2 degrees warming is already a hell. Like they are already suffering. So we are like global warming to 1.5 degrees in compared to pre-industrial levels, because otherwise the effects will be catastrophic, and we will feel them all over the world, and we will feel them in Europe. And so right now, the science, like as far as we know, right now 1.5 degrees can still be reached. But what needs to, like scientific, like completely, like scientifically, it is still possible to stop, like to stay in line with 1.5 degrees. Look, globally, societally, I don't know. We'll see. Right now, the emissions reduction targets that need to be handed in to the UN only account for one degree emissions reduction by 2030. Well, like 1% of what is necessary. So not 1 degree, sorry, 1%. And so that is obviously, right now, at the rate we're going, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we need to stop fighting for it, because our friends in the Philippines, our friends in South Africa, in Uganda will suffer if we stop fighting.
So obviously that's true. Totally, I totally agree. And this is maybe the problem that the the biggest emissions are not produced in these countries, but they feel it the first. So they are the first to feel how it's warming up. And here in Northern Europe, for example, we are the ones who are polluting the most historically. Also, maybe not today, not that much anymore, but historically we have like a very big accumulation of emissions, but we are the ones who are feeling it the last. But we are already feeling it right now because the winters have been so warm for the past 4 or 5 years, and the summers are the last 2 summers we had with these droughts. And I'm living in Münster, and here we have a lake. And 2 years ago, it was like 36 degrees on a Tuesday, and all fish died in the lake. All fish, nothing, no fish was alive anymore. So there were like 10 trucks who had to put away, I think, like, I don't know, like 100 tons of dead fish out of the middle of the city. And this is like I think a sign that people have to have sometimes. They have to feel it and see it sometimes. And if this is not moving the people, or if it's not real, like, giving them a realization of how bad the situation already is, then I don't know what is, because
Yeah.
it has moved so far, and we are still in a discussion maybe where we are still a little bit backwards, still a little bit like 5 years, like 5 or 10 years ago, but we have moved so far already, I think, in this
So I think what we can
development.
see is that like the climate crisis is undeniably here. Like we are, well, even in Germany and Europe, we can see that one temperature record like after the next is being broken. We are like looking back on the hottest years in like entirety of human history. Um, and it like we can see it like not only with droughts, with people dying in heat waves, like the effects on agricultural sector and so on. And at the same time, we cannot wait until everybody can undeniably feel the climate crisis, because then it will be too late. And so I think we don't want to wait, because otherwise we will suffer so much more in the future, and we will have to like it will cost us so much more on like a personal level, but also like actually on like an economic level. And we see that like over 70% of people in Germany like recognize that the climate crisis is like a real is an actual danger, and they recognize the need to act quickly. But governments are ignoring that, and I think that's the place that we like. I don't. The problem is not like we obviously like journalism has a role in that, because we need to be naming this as the climate crisis. We need to be reporting on the full like drastic character of this situation. At the same time, politics they need to take the steps, because right now politics on a national level, but also like on many state levels, is just not in line with the situation of society and of science and of like young people right now. So even though, like, for instance, 2/3 of people were against giving millions of euros to coal companies and to fossil companies as part of like the coal, I mean, they call it exit, it's not really an exit. Governments did it anyway. And even though like a large part of society, like we can see statistically are for like a quick decarbonization, that is not happening on a political level, because that would obviously mean we need to go against interests of lobbies to making like maximizing profit right now. And that's what needs to happen right now, because I don't think the problem is in society at the moment, to be honest. I think the problem is on the political level.
Okay, so you think that people would, like the normal average people, would be willing to do more, but they are held back by political levels and executive levels
Yeah,
of
I mean, we
politics?
see that statistically. People are willing to do more. People just, like, obviously in a system that doesn't give me the option to act accordingly, it's not possible. If there's no good public infrastructure, if there's no, cheap vegetarian food, if there's no cheap renewable electricity, then then we cannot, as individuals, act accordingly, if we don't have the possibility to.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I would probably agree. The thing is, because this is also discussed a lot as maybe one solution to climate change is just to put a price on CO2 emissions. So CO2 price, because then in economics, then the market would react to this certain price. Because the higher the price, the more companies have the incentive to move
Yeah.
and to reduce emissions. So, are you in favor of the CO2 price, or do you think it's not
Yeah, it's actually one of
making
our
sense?
demands as Fridays for Future, one of the 6 demands we formulated in 2019. We need to, yeah, obviously, we need to put a price on carbon because right now all those costs are being externalized and are not like taken into account for companies. And that price needs to reflect the cost of the climate crisis for future generations. Because, right, like, the government, like, the like part of the climate package last year was a CO2 price of I think 25 euros we've gotten it up to now per like ton of CO2, and that doesn't have an effect like an economic effect, like that won't have like a Lenkungswirkung. I don't know how you say that in English.
Mm.
Uh,
Hmm.
Whereas we know that 1 ton of CO2 that is emitted right now will cost, like, my generation will cost a future generation 180 euros in like the from the consequences of the climate crisis. So that, like, we need to start like much higher. We need to like enter with like a price of 80 to 100 euros per ton. We need to raise it very, very quickly to 180 euros per ton in order to in order to have a generational justice effect like reflected within that.
Hmm. So 100 euros, 180 euros per ton, and then so each company that would emit a ton of CO2 per year, by that logic, would have to pay 100 euros per year, 180 euros per year. So how do you think it's important to communicate this more to the people, what actually a CO2 price is? Because sometimes to me it seems to be like a more scientific debate sometimes when you watch TV or something, or watch discussions in general in politics about that. But maybe to just bring this nearer to the people so that they understand what it actually means, and whether this would mean actually like a real reduction of welfare for them in the real life,
Yeah.
or if it doesn't, and if it just helps the environment, but would just need a little adaptation of work in general.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, that also depends very much again how we in the end, like, how policy is in the end made, because it's very possible to create a CO2 pricing system that takes into account like social fairness, and that makes sure that this price is not felt by the people who are already like, you know at the poorest in our society and who are already suffering under the economic system. But you don't have to do that. So the CO2 price that is in place, right, that is going to be put in place, right, like in the, I think, coming time from like the national government in Germany is not socially fair, and that will be something that will in the end cause poorer people in Germany to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of that's been our role a lot as a youth movement to, like, on this education basis, making yeah a putting information that is like takes a small level of understanding only to comprehend. And I think that's definitely something that needs to happen more, and that needs to happen. I mean, that is a debate, I think, that goes beyond climate. How we create our education system, how we create what the responsibility of media is in the realm of like society, and how we communicate information in a way that it is like accessible by many. And I think that's definitely also something that needs to happen like on a much larger level, but definitely something that needs to happen when we're talking about like specific things we are doing against the climate crisis.
Okay, cool. Well, just a different topic. This is maybe also sometimes interesting just for people to understand Fridays for Future, just the movement in general, like how it's organized, because you said it's a grassroots movement. But so how do you guys coordinate? But you have to have like certain coordination on certain levels, for example, because so you're publicly known. Some others, like Luisa Neubauer, for example, are very known also. Do you guys have like a communication strategy? Do you, like, for example, I don't know, if you give like an interview or something, do you have to like talk to the others first, and then you say like, hey, I have this interview, I'm gonna talk about this and that, and I don't know, like just
Yeah.
to inform you guys or something, or is it just like very independent people who all have the same agenda somewhat?
No, of course we coordinate a lot because like there's no other way we would have got that many people on the streets at the same time if we like didn't have a structure. So like on a national level, we have like a press working group that like are responsible for a lot of like press strategy and writing press releases and so on. And then we also have like a group that are responsible for all of these like requests and like making sure that they go to specific people. And then we also, as like individuals, obviously like loop back with our press team to let them know like what's happening and to like make sure it's fine with like we're doing specific interviews and so on.
Okay, okay,
And I
okay.
think there's like mechanisms like that in a lot of different places for like different topics.
Okay, interesting, cool, cool. And then just another question I would have is about Fridays for Future's like political, because you want to move something out of like a grassroots movement out of society, and then you want to change things. So are there no ambitions politically to, I don't know, go to or be part of elections to a party, for example? Because I think I heard there were like things about the Fridays for Future party in southern Germany. I think in Baden-Württemberg or something. Isn't there something like
And
that? Or
that's the climate list that you're probably talking about.
oh, okay, okay,
That different price. There's some people from Fridays for Future who are also part of that, but that's not a Fridays for Future party in any
oh, okay,
way,
okay.
and we're not affiliated. And I think that's. I mean, first of all, like our theory of change from the very beginning has been that we need to shift the entire party spectrum. So we have been like a very like non-partisan organization because it's clear that in order to enact swift climate like policies and instruments, there needs to be majorities in parliament. So it's not enough if one party, for instance, is like if like there's not really one right now, but if one party had a plan for 1.5 degrees, that would not still be enough because no party is a super majority. So from the very beginning, like we have seen our job as like shifting the climate debate entirely in society, but also in the party spectrum, because in order to get to a place where we can have like a democratic process about what these like measures look like, we need to have all the parties in a place where they even accept the climate crisis, the problem, where they even accept Germany's responsibility. So that needs to continue happening. And so even if we were to create a party, it would first of all take way too long. By the time we have a party that is like viable for parliament, we've wasted so much time. The climate crisis is already here. And second of all, we would not like that would bring like a few more percent and a few more people who want to do climate action, but it would still not like create the wide consensus that we need.
Okay, okay. Because this is just something I thought about, is that if even the regional parliaments or a national parliament in Germany or a national parliament in France or a national parliament in Spain, if that is enough actually to change anything about climate issues, or if you have to put it on another level, which would be the European Parliament, the European Union. Do you guys think there you can move maybe more? Maybe this is like the bigger thing to influence than a national parliament?
But we need to do both, like
Okay.
undeniably. Like that's what we've been doing from the very beginning. And we like on a European level, obviously the way that European Union is built, not only does the Parliament have like power, but also the national governments. So we've seen that a lot over the last 2 years. That Germany has been like slowing action on the European level, like wanting to continue to invest in the common agricultural policy from Julia Glöckner, like it's a plan that will keep giving money for the next 7 years to like agricultural lobbies and like not like continuing to worsen the climate crisis on that level. So we see like so many examples of like a German national government that has not understood the severity of the climate crisis, then also creating like a lack of action on a European level. So we need to obviously have like a many-pronged approach, not only at like a local level, at like a state level and country level and a European level, and then obviously also worldwide, where we're working together like all over the world.
Okay, worldwide, also like United Nations, for example, which would be the only worldwide committee or organization that actually tries to bring together the nations, or
yeah, I mean, action on a worldwide level basically means that we have like common campaigns or common like goals on an international level for Fridays for Future, that we like take, that we try to influence like events such as the UN Climate Conference or like international like the World Economic Forum or like the meeting of the G20 finance ministers and so on. So there's like obviously all these places that are also important on the international level. And because I think like we are in a really bad situation right now concerning the climate crisis, and if we want to at all be able to deal with that, then we need action on every level. Like we need to change our cities, change our towns, like change our countries, like and that's kind of the power of Fridays for Future, because like we have over 500 local groups, we are like everywhere, and we have so many people that we can put capacities into making change happen everywhere.
Okay, okay. Because this is the thing that maybe people are sometimes also worried about, is just that. So we have all these committees. We have a national, we have a European level, we have the international United Nations level. We have the climate agreement of Paris, but then action is not really working according to these agreements. Action is often done by national, regional, or local governments, or even just individual companies and individual people. So sometimes people worry that these over nationalized agreements do not really lead to a specific concrete result in the end, because there's so many levels in between that it just fades out. You know what I mean? Like it starts here and then it just, I don't know, it has no concrete result on the lowest level in the end.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that, or do you worry about that at all?
I mean, that's the very reason, right, we started taking the streets, because 2015 the Paris Agreement was signed that held all governments to stay in line with 1.5, like if possible 2 degrees, and that hasn't happened, and that's like the place, that's where we kind of enter the realm of society, and I think like agreements are obviously really important, because we have a common basis that we're working from, and we have like a common like goal that we're going towards. But obviously agreements don't mean anything if we don't act accordingly, and I think sadly that hasn't, like, governments have not been doing that on their own, and that's kind of like our job to make them act.
Okay, yeah, I agree totally. That's important. So another thing I want to talk about was just the problems that Fridays for Futures is facing due to the Corona pandemic, because you guys can't protest every Friday anymore that in big crowds, because it's just not possible during a pandemic. How did you guys react to that, and what is maybe your future adaptation to that problem?
Yeah. I mean, we've been in lockdown for almost a year now, right? Or like different phases. Like I think for so much in society, we've obviously had to rethink how we make climate action happen. We cannot, like, we were built as a movement on mass protest, and that's obviously something that we can't do right now in the face of a global pandemic. And we need to, we have to rethink how we strike, how we force action. And I think we've been we've been quite successful in that, as we, did like an online strike last April, where we also had thousands of placards in front of the Bundestag in Berlin, where we've had socially distanced strikes over the summer and over the fall last year, but it was still possible, where, we actually have our next global climate, like day of climate action at the end on the 19th of March coming soon right now, where we have like all these creative actions with like art and chalk and placards and like banner drops and like bike demonstrations and so on. So like obviously protest looks different, just like so much looks different this year for so many people, and but at the same time it's clear that just because like we are not in the luxurious situation of being able to deal with one climate crisis, like one crisis at a time, but we are in like the situation where we have an imperative to act on the pandemic, but also act on climate, because we can't, we have so much to lose if we don't.
Mm-hmm. And the thing was with the protest that you had, because I think when it started first, because you were trying to protest every Friday, right? This was like the goal, maybe, to each Friday. But now this is not possible due to the pandemic. But are you guys trying to reconnect to that rhythm, to do that in the summer, maybe when the pandemic is over, when everyone is hopefully vaccinated, that you can do that again every Friday, or is that not a goal?
There's some things happening every Friday, because we have so many local groups. There's obviously something happening all the time everywhere, or like somewhere. And I think, at the beginning for a long time, it was, very much us striking on Fridays created a civil discourse around the climate crisis, and it got like people mad, and it got people angry, and people were discussing, are they allowed to do that? And so it was a really effective measure of getting, climate crisis into the public realm. But at the same time, over the last 2 years, obviously that form, that form of action has, it's been used a lot. Nobody really cares anymore that people are sacrificing their education. Nobody really cares anymore that we don't go to school on Fridays. So obviously we have also shifted our perspective on that, and we have shifted where we put our priorities, as much as being present every week, really important, but school striking as a form of action on a regular basis isn't really effective anymore. So but that's that was the way before the pandemic already, so that's kind of been something that's been happening for a long time, that development.
Okay, because this is the thing that I'm worried about a little bit, that when you guys want to influence more, and when you want to push more, and when you want to actually change something about governmental policies, then you have to find instruments to do that. You have to find instruments to push your interests into not only maybe public discussion, but actually into legislative decisions in the end. That how is actually this changing laws, maybe, or how is this, I don't know, So what? Because you must have a strategic group or something. You must have the strategic topics that you talk about. You must have. This you have to discuss that at least, I guess. So do you have anything on that where you want to? How do you want to influence continuously, and how do you want to, have positive effects?
Yeah. I mean, more than school striking, there's obviously so many different strategies and ways to create to create pressure on politics, and to force action. And that's, I mean, we have been successful in different places over the last years, where individual cities have had to come up with climate plans, where we've seen whereas during the financial crisis in 2008, we ended up spending a bunch of money to save the car industry. That we just scraped past that this time of the pandemic, because we went to the streets, because we had all these different levels of digital action. We the Abwrackprämie, so a money incentive to buy new cars, was not passed, not barely, but it did not pass. So I mean, I think we see that more than school strikes, activating people not only through online measures and tools, but also on the streets, and with strategic cooperation with different actors on a societal level, has it does work. And I think we will continue to do that. We will continue to build pressure by taking to the streets. And just think that we've seen over the last 1.5 years that school striking itself is not such an integral part of that anymore.
Okay. But you don't want to change because the age group of Fridays for Future is also very young, obviously, because you have lots of young students between maybe 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. But generally your movement is open to anyone, right? Because you don't specifically focus on just students and I don't know, people going to university and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we have all these other groups that actually were founded, like the Teachers for Future, the Beekeepers for Future, the Farmers for Future, the I don't know, there's so many for future groups. So I think that shows how we've activated so many different realms of society, where different people can become active. And I think everyone, I was just some 16-year-old kid who was scared and who was angry, and I helped build this movement. And we see so many other young people who you would think are just regular people, but because of this situation, have become are extraordinary activists, and that there's so much space for everyone. So whether you're an artist or a mathematician or a programmer, or you don't think you have any skills at all, we need everyone. We need all these people to join the movement, and whether that's with Fridays for Future, whether that's with a different organization or actor in the climate movement, whether that's I don't care, hit me up, come on board. This is there's no better time to start than the present, than right now. I think I just want to make that really clear, that we will only win this fight if we are willing to fight.
Yeah. True. And also, this is the thing that would interest me, is just about the party, the Green Party that we have in Germany, which is right now very successful. We have like 20%, 22%, I think, that they have in well, right now in the polls. How is that like relationship that you have with the party? Is it like a complicated relationship because you somewhat have the same goals, but then sometimes you're also maybe competing with each other because the Green Party is for you guys maybe not radical enough or doesn't do enough to stick to the 1.5 degree goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that like on in like yeah, the Green Party will not solve the climate crisis on their own,
Mm,
and I think that has to be really clear. And we've had obviously moments where we've like instead of using us as like a reason to become more like radical and to take more action. I think the Green Party has sometimes like lax because they were like, oh, we have Fridays for Future, like we'll be fine.
mm,
And we've seen that in like cities in like Hamburg, where instead of using the Fridays for Future movement in Hamburg as like a reason to enact like radical legislation, like instead like the Green Party took nice pictures that our demonstrations were like great, the kids are like with us, and that's obviously a really good difficult place for us. And like in the end, we know that like the Green Party, just as all other parties, will be one that we need to continue to push, and that we need to continue to drive to like radical climate action,
yes.
and just as like all the other parties. And I think that yeah, like for us, it's really clear that we will continue to have like a non-partisan approach in order to like push the entire political spectrum.
Exactly, because isn't this also maybe your entry goal, or I don't know if that's the right word, but to a possible government in Germany when you try to push the Green Party more and when you try to influence more and when you try to find access points where you say, hey, these and these and these things we want to see, we need to see, otherwise you guys are not worth anything. When you say that and when you put that in on your posters and when you campaign about things, when you don't realize certain things, then you're worth nothing or your message is worth nothing. So isn't this your entrance possibility? Because the Green Party might very likely form a government with the Conservative Party in Germany in the future in this fall. And what does that and what this means is that once this government is built, it will be also a big part of the European executive level. So is this not a thing that you guys see or a strategy that you have? Because yeah, to me, this would be like the obvious access point to the executive level of politics.
By so yeah, of course. I mean, we don't know what like the next governing coalition will look like. I think it's like obviously too early to know that like this will be the one way it will be.
Mm,
And for us, we are in a situation where we need every party and like every party program to be in line with 1.5 degrees, and we need like we need we need to elect people because like we can trust them on climate, and we need people to elect people they can trust on climate. And for us, I mean, obviously we will continue pushing the Green Party just like we'll be pushing any other party. Like I feel like I think like in the political discourse we are so used to partial change.
mm,
It's always this question of, okay, we have this big problem and we've done some things about it and it's not enough, but like we get points like we did something.
mm.
And like it doesn't work like that for the climate crisis. Like you don't get points for investing in energy efficiency if at the same time you are like putting money into like roadways and like cutting up forests like the Green Party has been doing in Hessen. So and because in the end what counts is if we stay in line with 1.5 degrees, if we can stop our climate system from reaching a tipping point. And I think that is like, so we are taking part in a civil discourse from like an entirely different position
Yeah,
than like any other actor in like concerning any other political topic really.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that has to be so clear. Like the Greens don't get points because they may be like better on climate than everybody else, because we need them to not just be better, we need them to be like good, and we need all the other parties to be good as well.
Yeah, yeah, and then you see controversies of the Green Party in Hessen and in the forest and all that. So you see there is no easy solution for ambitious political plans because there's so many interests that you have to, I don't know, that you have to always take into account. And if you just try to push something I don't know, 100% through, then there will be someone who's always going to be saying like, no, you can't do this, and this he or she's going to veto it, and all that. So maybe this is also a political systemic problem that we have in Germany, whereas you can't have ambitious political plans on a national level that are actually being followed by like most other parts in the country, because you have the regional levels, the governments, the local governments. I mean, you see that right now in the corona pandemic, that when the national government says something of the pandemic and like some goals that we're trying to vaccinate people quickly, then like the regional governments are always saying like, yeah, we would, but we have no vaccine or whatever. And then the local government is saying, well, the regional governments didn't provide this and this, so we can vaccinate. And then maybe that's the same problem with work against climate or the fight against climate change, because there are too many levels, there are too many legislative levels, and there are too many people who are trying to be part of a decision, and in the end, the product is crap, because at first it was a good idea, but when you have 20 or 30 levels of people deciding about it and trying to do something about it, then there will be no real good thing in the end anymore, I think. I mean, this is my view, but
I mean, what's the alternatives? We have a democratic political system for a reason, and because including lots of perspectives, including lots of people, usually makes policy better. And I think in a lot of places we overcomplicate things, because in Hasia they did not need to build like the roadway through the forest. Like on a national level, you can like enact like a moratorium, so just like a stop in building new roadways. On like a local level, like there are instruments, and I think like there are easy solutions sometimes. Like not all of the time. Like I'm not saying this isn't going to be complicated and isn't going to be hard and difficult for so many people, but sometimes it's easy to make the right decisions if we are willing, of course, to to have like less profits for coal companies, for car companies, for like Ferrero, who wanted that roadway in Hessen. Like that was it was so obvious, just like a lobby interests that were being acted upon. And that is I think that is obviously a huge systemic problem on like a political level, that we cannot get lobby out of our politics, that we have again and again the car industry, the the flying industry, like so many industries that take that influence our politics, and that make that create costs for like regular people and for our young generation. I think that is definitely a systemic problem, and I think, but I'm not there are so many things you can do on a national level against the climate crisis, and just as there are so many things you can do on a local level, and I would not say that has to be like a negative aspect necessarily.
Okay, so you don't think that, for example, if you would declare like the international climate crisis as a humanitarian crisis, I mean, I think it's probably already declared like that, but if you would declare that as an acute risk to survival of people and to the survival of our society as we know it, if you would declare that as that on a national level, on a European level, maybe also on the United Nations level, but that's not...
I mean, the European level has already, like, the European Union has declared a climate emergency already. That happened last year.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's wonderful, but that's not political. Like, that's not policy. Like, we can do all the things we want. Like, I think that's not... Like, that we don't connect that with concrete, measures and policy.
Exactly. And so if you would do that, but true, like on the European level, maybe that doesn't really work that well, but if you would do that on a national level, and then you would have to have if it's like an emergency situation where lives of people are at risk, then you would have to have better and more concrete instruments to fight against this issue, because the climate crisis is a humanitarian crisis, just like the corona pandemic. It is causing such huge problems, but it is not declared yet as this big of a crisis as the corona pandemic, for example. But if you would do that, then it would give you maybe better instruments and more force and more, I don't know, long-term executive power to really change something dramatically, and then things like in the economy could adapt and change towards these changing circumstances on the executive and legislative level, maybe.
I mean, we don't really have a position on this as like Fridays for Future. My personal view on like the declaration of a climate emergency is that it's like another empty promise. Like the UK declared a climate emergency, now they're building like a new coal, like how high-powered coal plant, and they're like, and in the end, it's like just declaring something or like making a promise is not what will reduce emissions. And I think if you obviously connect such a declaration with like concrete levels, like for instance, like veto power for like a climate ministry, for instance, which is like, you know, something that like a finance minister, for instance, has, or like if you connect it with concrete measures, I mean, go ahead. Other than that, I don't think declaring climate emergency is like my like priority in getting climate action on a national and European level. Yeah, because I think we have like there's so many other places that we can create concrete action.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get it. Totally understand. Yeah. So right now you're in Frankfurt, right? And you guys are still preparing for the protests that you are going to have next week. You said 13th of March.
Yeah, on the 19th.
19th of March. Okay. And that's going to be still like a European thing, a European, or is it just in Germany, Fridays for Future?
No, it's a worldwide thing.
Worldwide.
So we have strikes
Okay.
happening in Brazil, in the Philippines, in Uganda, like everywhere.
Okay.
In England and Germany. So I mean, it will look different depending on like what the lockdown level is. Depending on what the political situation is, but we will be everywhere. We'll be all over the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think we already passed like 1 hour 10 minutes. So I'm just thanking you for this interview and for the conversation we had about Fridays for Future goals. I don't know if you want to add something to something, if you have something important still to say about what we talked about earlier, something you want to, I don't know,
Yeah, I mean,
still
thank
say.
you so much for having me. And if anybody, after listening to this thinks, I want to be part of this, I want to join this movement, hit me up. You can contact like after Fridays for Future, you can contact me on like Instagram or something. I'm just so excited if people are like I want to commit to this movement. I want to join the good fight. So yeah, if anyone's thinking about it, this is your sign, or the reason you should do it right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So just thank you very much, and yeah, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thanks.
All right.